My guest today on 12 Minutes With is Cyprus's Deputy Minister for Migration and International Protection, Dr. Nicholas Ioannides. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The EU has just struck a deal on new rules which will speed up the return of migrants deemed not to have the legal right to stay in the European Union. Some would say this is the most major hardline shift in EU migration policy in decades. When do you expect to see the results of this? Because we know that at the moment only 27% on average of the migrants ordered to return are actually returning to their countries of origin.
Of course, this is a crucial matter for the European Union member states and our European citizens. So we wanted to conclude the negotiations with the European Parliament and the Commission in order to enact a legal basis, a new legal framework in order to increase the number, both the number and the rate of returns, because as you rightly mentioned, the rates are low, and it is quite important to have an effective return system in order for the general overall European migration policy to function properly. Thus, we believe that the missing piece of the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum, namely the return regulation that we agreed on Monday, will contribute to the effectiveness of our migration policy.
Let's get into the details of this. Because for our viewers at home, it might be a bit confusing, but this is about making sure that those people who are ordered to leave because they don't have the legal right to stay, they have not been granted asylum, to go to their home countries. But isn't it true that the problem in many cases is that those home countries, the countries of origin, are not accepting those migrants back? And if so, what do these new rules do to tackle that issue?
Well, this is part of the problem, namely countries that do not accept their nationals. The other problem, or aspect of this problem, is the fact that third country nationals do not cooperate with member states in order to repatriate. Therefore, the new regulation envisages measures that would exert pressure on individuals to collaborate with member states. For instance, there will be stricter detention rules and law guarantee bans that would actually push, to put it this way, third country nationals to work with member states and accept their repatriation. And when it comes to third countries that do not accept their nationals, we're actually discussing measures like trade agreements or visa measures in order to make those third countries to work with us so as to improve the return rate. Yes.
At the heart of this, obviously, are the new return hubs. So these would be centres that the EU can build in countries outside the EU, provided they strike a bilateral deal with that country in question. And any migrant that has rejected asylum could be sent there, essentially. Isn't there a risk that these people could become stuck in a legal limbo, for example, if their countries of origin do not accept them back?
Well, of course, the main issue we've been trying to deal with is the fact that third country nationals do not have a legal right to stay in the European Union. Therefore, they have to depart. So if they're not collaborating with us or the country of origin won't accept them, then we have to find a solution. And this solution is a so-called return hubs. And something that is quite important to everyone, to member states and the Commission, is that the human rights should be upheld and safeguarded.
How will that be ensured? And
that is why one of the means to ensure this is the engagement of international organizations such as the UNHCR and International Organization of Migration. And of course, we'll be monitoring the situation. We don't want to punish those people. We just want to make sure that those who have no right to remain in the European Union will depart and will not, and will protect our asylum systems from misuse.
If there is a case where there is a return hub where basic rights are not being upheld, What then happens to these people?
There will be safeguards in the agreements concluded between member states and the third countries hosting such centres, which will stipulate the details of what's happening in case there's a human rights violation. But in any case, this is still there are no tangible results. We've just been discussing some ideas, but now that the regulation has been agreed, it will start delving into the matter in order to adopt more tangible measures.
Because we are talking as well about children, and unaccompanied children are excluded. But
yes,
if they are with their families, they can also be sent to these return hubs. These minors, of course, cannot be blamed for being irregular migrants. They are minors, they are with their families, but yet they are being sent to these camps. Are you concerned about their safety, their well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that earlier, that upholding human rights is a red line for everyone. We don't want any violations of EU and international law. But at the same time, we have to strike a balance between illegal stay and the need to uphold human rights. Therefore, before a family is being sent to an accommodation centre, a return hub, we will examine all relevant aspects, and one of them is the best interest of the child. So all these factors will be taken into consideration prior to making a decision of sending families to return hubs.
What would you say to those critics that say that with the fixation on irregular migration, that the EU is losing its moral compass?
Well, I'll disagree with this because it's not just about irregular migration. And as a matter of fact, there are several provisions in the new EU Pact on Migration and Asylum that actually enhance the protection of individuals, such as the provision of legal counselling and the establishment of a monitoring mechanism for human rights. And other than that, in parallel, we've been working on creating legal pathways for migration through concepts like the EU talent pool, through our visa policies. We'd like to open up legal pathways, and this way we believe that we will tackle irregular migration facilitated by criminal smuggling networks, because that's the main problem.
Just briefly on the return hubs before we move on, will the Cypriot government be looking to establish these hubs itself?
Well, we haven't discussed this yet. Of course, there was no legal basis until recently. There have been some discussions within the Union between member states. And now that we've got our legal basis, of course, we're interested in participating in discussions with other member states so as to find solutions and implement these provisions.
Because we know there are 5 member states already said they're exploring this, including the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Greece and Austria. What countries do you think could be possible partners here? Because, you know, we are talking about countries that must have some kind of democratic standards, yet these are countries that are willing to accept these rejected asylum seekers. Who do you see as possible partners in this?
Well, I cannot refer to specific countries, but what you described actually is what the regulation envisages, that the countries where return hubs will be established should safeguard, protect and observe human rights. So these are the criteria set by the regulation.
I want to ask you about the situation of Cyprus. It could be described as a frontline state when it comes to migration. How concerned are you about instability in the Middle East and the potential impact on migration flows, particularly, of course, the situation in Lebanon?
Well, indeed, Cyprus is a frontline member state that has received massive migratory flows over the last years. And that is why our government has adopted strict measures in order to reduce irregular flows. And we've actually managed to do so. We managed to reduce irregular flows by nearly 90% over the last 3 years. But as you mentioned, we're in a volatile region, so we always remain vigilant lest a new crisis erupts, a new refugee crisis erupts in the region. And of course, unfortunately, we've seen armed conflicts in the region, in Iran, in Lebanon. So far, no migratory flows have been created. We've received no migrants from these regions. And in any case, the new Pact on Migration and Asylum also stipulates measures for crisis management. It's the first time that we've got such a comprehensive legal framework in order to address this thorny issue.
Finally, Minister, before we finish, there is now a discussion, and I know you'll be discussing this with your EU counterparts this week, about whether the EU should continue to provide temporary protection to Ukrainian men, young men approaching the age of conscription. Do you think that there should be a shift in these rules? Because Chancellor Merz of Germany, for example, has been calling on this to avoid a situation where men approaching the conscription age are leaving Ukraine en masse.
Well, as you know, protection to Ukrainian citizens, Ukrainian nationals, has been extended for a year to spring 2027. But of course, we have to discuss the future, as you mentioned. And that's what we're planning on doing in Luxembourg in order to listen to member states, listen to their concerns, to their views, and discuss with the Commission the way forward. We've made no particular decisions so far, and it's a first-class opportunity during the Council to exchange views and somehow decide on the way forward regarding this important issue. But our support to Ukraine is there. Nothing has changed concerning this. But at the same time, we need to see how things will evolve in the coming years.
OK, Minister, thank you so much.
Thank you.